I'm a little bit shorter, but good morning, everyone. How are you? Awesome group this morning. I'm Erin Rogers. I'm the morning and midday anchor at ABC 24. So I've been up since about 1:30 this morning, so bear with me. But I read every morning, so I should be able to get through these speakers. So we want to make sure we're still going with the. All righty, we are changing the program up yet again, back to the original. So we are going to start with Dr. Ish Major. Dr. Ish has spent over 15 years demystifying the male psyche and helping men and women navigate their way through the dating jungle. Educated at the University of South Carolina School of Medicine, Dr. Ish is a board-certified psychiatrist who specializes in women, children, and families, and all things dating, mating, and relating. Dr. Ish was named to the prestigious list of America's top psychiatrists for the last 3 years and is recognized as the International Association of Healthcare Professionals as one of the leading physicians of the world. Dr. Ish continues to set the standard for on-camera and in-office excellence of care for all of your mental health and relationship needs, while expanding his interests and battling one of the most devastating epidemics our country has ever seen, which we're all here today, the opioid crisis. With multiple detox clinics throughout the Southeast, he's been able to do that. Well, as an on-camera expert, Dr. Ish is the co-host of WeTV's hit series, Marriage and Family Boot Camp Reality Stars, and is a frequent guest host on not only The Doctors, but he's also a resident expert on the Tamron Hall Show, the Today Show, and the Steve Harvey Show. I'm sure all of us have seen at least one of those. He previously brought his experience to WeTV's X-Isle alongside Carmen Electra. They help couples break free from past relationships that were holding them back. Well, he has also been featured in Women's Health, Cosmo, More Magazine, and Happen Magazine on Match.com. Dr. Ish believes that only by getting clear and vocal about your needs and wants do you have a real chance at finding true happiness ever after. In Decoding Men's Lies, he penned Little White Whys. Whys help empower women to make better relationship decisions by revealing the hidden truths in men's lives. When people are sick and tired of not having the love they feel they deserve, then they come see Dr. Ish. So help me welcome Dr. Ish to the stage.
Good morning. Well, that was one heck of a introduction. I don't know if I can live up to that. I'm going to tell you right now. Let's go ahead and lower those expectations. It is early. I am not a morning person, and we're going to figure this out best we can. So the title of this talk is Why You Matter, Why This Matters, Why What We Do Matters. It's not going to be super clinical, but hopefully I'll give you enough clinical stuff to help things make sense. First off, let's see if we can get the slides rolling. There we go. So, start off introductions. Thank you for the lovely introduction. That's a lot. I need to shorten that. I am Dr. Ish Major. I am a board-certified psychiatrist and a certified TV show host. So you may have seen me on my show, Marriage Boot Camp, where I'm taking some of your favorite housewives or teen moms or loving hip hop stars through the paces as we put them through their relationship paces. You may have seen me on Mama June, helping that family with Honey Boo Boo, trying to get her substance use not to rip that family apart. Maybe cutting up with Nick Cannon, doing the man panel, answering honest questions from a man's point of view, co-hosting The Doctors. I'm all over, but that's the thing people know, that's the thing people see. What people don't know is that when I'm not on camera, I'm actually in the clinic, seeing patients, which is where I prefer to be, doing the one-on-one. I have 4 Suboxone clinics of my own in South Carolina, and I work with Crossroads as their senior vice president of health equity, right? And so what does that mean? Well, health equity means I believe that everybody, black, white, brown, everything in between, man, woman, and whatever else you identify should have access to the highest level of healthcare that you possibly can, so that you can show up as the best, most healthy version of yourself as you possibly can, right? It seems like a no-brainer, but it really hasn't. So how did I get to Crossroads? And folks say, oh, I didn't know you were with Crossroads. Well, let me give you a little backstory. Any comic book fans in the house? There we go, right down there. Look, I'm a huge comic book fan. X-Men, Marvel, the whole deal. Growing up, and I had boxes and boxes of comics in their bags with their, with the bards on the back and all this stuff. But growing up, to me, the favorite part, my most favorite part of the comic book wasn't really the fight scenes, right? I always dug into the backstory, right? I want the origin story. I want to know how people came to be. How did you get your powers? Who were you before you had those powers? How did those powers change how you showed up in life, right? Did you embrace it, or do you try to hide it? So the backstory on how I got here is I am very, very good friends with the CEO, Rupert McCormick. We were on the phone at 6:30 this morning. Our backstory is August 8th, 1995, walking down the hall in the University of South Carolina School of Medicine for our first day of med school. And everybody's nervous. And I walk up to the classroom. There's a group huddled up outside the room. And I walk up, I'm like, hey guys, I'm Ish. And the first person who stuck their hand out was Rupert. He said, hey, I'm Rupert. And we've been fast friends ever since. So that's how I got here. That is my backstory. There's no other place I want to be than helping folks do the thing, whether it's one-on-one in the clinic or one-on 2 million on TV, however that works. I love being able to show up and in some way, some small way, maybe help your life be a little bit better today, right? That's the whole goal for me, right? So when I think about duties, right? My duty as a doctor, that's it. When I think about hosting duties, TV show hosting duties, I don't know, any TV buffs out there, any movie buffs, Netflix bingers, anything? Y'all some school, y'all some hard workers. Look, I'm a TV super freak, right? I'm just, whatever the latest, greatest thing is, I'm binging it and I'm all in, right? But as a host, and you can speak to this as well, our job is to help define those characters for you, right? Every character you see on TV, they are coming from somewhere and then they're going someplace. So my job as a host is to help you understand where they're coming from and where they're going. So that by the time they leave that screen, they leave that stage, I want you to be able to look and say, oh wait, where are they going? I like that person. I want to know what happens next, right? Same thing in the clinic. Every patient who shows up, they're coming from someplace and they're going somewhere. And it's our job as providers to help them get there, right? And the first thing we need to do is help them define their origin story. How did you get to us today, right? What is that backstory? And how do we do that? Well, we got to help them find their voice. You can never orphan your story. You can never orphan your narrative. Where it is you're from, who it is you think you are, and how you came to be. When you give that up, you give up your power. And that is how a lot of our patients come to us, without power, because they've been shamed out of their origin story, right? Because people somehow think addiction is a choice. And it's a series of bad choices you're making. If you could just be a better person and maybe find Jesus or whatever, right? But that's just not how it works. So our job is to help our folks find their origin story, find their voice. And how do we do that? Well, we got to do 3 things. We got to help them feel seen, heard, and understood. Now, she said in the opener that I'm a relationship expert. True. So I can't leave here today without giving you a little bit of relationship advice, right? Just a pinch for anybody who needs it. Lord knows I do. So in any relationship, in any dynamic, if you can do 3 things, if you can help a person feel seen, heard, and understood, they will feel this thing with you called a connection. And if they feel that connection, that gives them a chance at feeling this thing with you called belonging. And if you can help somebody feel like they belong because you're helping them feel seen, heard, and understood, they will never want to leave that relationship, ever. Let me repeat that. If you can help your partner feel seen, heard, and understood every single time you interact with them, they'll never want to leave you. And vice versa, you never want to leave them because you feel like you're home, right? So how do we do that with our patients? Well, the first thing we do, everybody who walks through the door, we stick our hand out and we put a smile on our face and we say, hey, I'm glad you're here. And for a lot of folks, that's when the emotion comes out because they hadn't been anywhere where somebody was glad to see them in a very, very long time. So who's Crossroads? Well, Crossroads is simply one of the largest providers of substance use in the country. We have over 122 facilities in over 10 states. We literally see over 27,000 patients per day. Is my clicker working? Am I off here? Do we have tech support in the house? Oh, maybe.
Flip it on.
Say again. Flip it on. I don't know what that means. Quick tutorial. All right. There we go. So our mission, what is Crossroads' mission? Right. We exist to improve health equity in order to create superior outcomes. We talked about health equity. Everybody deserves access to the best quality care possible so you can live, like as we say, as the kids say today, your best life. You can show up as the best version of yourself, right? I don't think that's an unfair thing to shoot for. I like the part that's not being said here, which is to create superior outcomes in people's lives, right? And that's not just a healthcare outcome. It's not just a healthy outcome. It's a relationship outcome. It's a job outcome. It's a new car outcome. It's a safe place to stay outcome, right? It's not having any food insecurity outcomes, right? This is what can happen when you wake up and your feet hit the floor and you feel healthy in the morning because you had access to good health care. And our vision is very, very simple, right? We want to provide the most convenient, comprehensive, high quality care through our specialty medical homes. Convenient, we're everywhere and we want to be more everywhere, right? High quality care, right? You walk into our, what we call a specialty medical home, which is you've got to have opiate addiction in order to be treated by us. But once you're in, now you've got access to mental health services. Now you've got access to primary care services. Now we can get to work on identifying your specific needs, whatever those may be, to help you move forward. Let's move past here. Let's go back. So let's dive right into the meat of the talk, right? Which is what we're here to talk about, the opiate epidemic. In particular, the overdose epidemic. So for those who don't know, as of today, we've had over 108,000 opiate overdose deaths in this country. 108,000. 2,000 of those happen right here in Tennessee. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's the take-home message from this slide, right? Think about that number. When we dive in a little bit deeper and talk about Shelby County and Davidson County and Knox County, right? 3 counties in Tennessee. Anybody know how many counties Tennessee has, by the way? 95. I Googled this morning. 95. Okay. So between Shelby County, Davidson County, and Knox County, those 3 counties out of 95 account for nearly half of the overdose in this state. I'm not from Tennessee. This is my first time in Memphis. So my question to the Memphisians out there is, what is happening in Shelby and Davidson and Knox County? Right? Now, look, I'm up here speaking and talking. When I ask questions, I expect folks to answer back. I'm a TV person, right? We don't really go by rules. So feel free to shout and answer back. But what is happening, right? Let's put a pin in that. What'd you say? What's happening in West Virginia? Say that louder. Right. right? You know what you're talking about. You're talking about social determinants of health, right? Poverty, racism, food insecurity, right? The lack of safe housing, lack of transportation. We've got so many folks who want to come to treatment, they have nowhere to get there. They live in the country. I grew up in the sticks in South Carolina. We didn't have buses. I didn't see a cab. Only time I ever saw a cab was on TV, right? So if you didn't have a car, you were stuck, right? Broadband. Do you have Wi-Fi on your phone so that your doctor's office can text you a reminder of your appointment the night before and the day of, right? These are those social determinants of health. This is where we're falling short of the mark, and this is where we're dropping the ball, right? So when we're talking about prescriptions filled in 2021, again, Shelby County, approximately 400,000 scripts filled in Shelby County. That's a lot. It's almost 500,000. Now, when we think about scripts filled versus for opiates versus the number of Suboxone prescriptions that are filled, does anybody want to take a guess at that ratio? What's that comparison? 50%, 20%, what would you say? About what? 50? Would you believe 3.5? Right? So for those 400,000 opiate prescriptions written, we had about 14,000 Suboxone prescriptions written. Here's why that's scary. Everybody sitting in this audience, everybody in here, if I prescribed you Lortab 5 milligrams 3 times a day, today and you started taking it right now, Friday morning, by Monday night, half of us would be physically dependent. Half, right? We're not addicted because the behavioral stuff hadn't come into play yet, but physically, if we stop those pills on Monday night, Tuesday morning, our body's gonna wake up and say, hey, we don't like this. We need more. So when you think about that, that lets you know how far behind the game we are when it comes to keeping up with MAT, Suboxone, and getting things done. Again, we're gonna stay on Shelby County. We're going to really dive into the overdose that's related, right? Traditionally, what have we thought about opiate use? Well, we thought it was a working class white folks disease, right? Let's be honest, Appalachian Trail, that's what we thought, right? West Virginia, right? Down the mountain trail, that's their problem. They got to figure it out, right? Then what happened? COVID happened, right? Now from the country, I like to give credit where credit is due. In Tennessee, the prescribing trends were headed in the right direction the last 3 years before we hit COVID. Prescriptions for opiates were going down, Suboxone prescriptions were going up, and then COVID happened, and then what? World went crazy. Half of us were inside, half of us were outside, most of us didn't know what to do, right? And when we hear supply chains, if anybody's got a house, anybody's been ordering stuff online, we couldn't, right? Supply chain, we couldn't get anything. We couldn't get dishwashing detergent, we couldn't get toilet paper, and drug dealers couldn't get drugs, right? Their supply chain dried up too. So they had to get real creative. So what did they do? They introduced opiates into the general drug supply. In particular, they introduced fentanyl into the general drug supply. Now it's in the weed. Now it's in the amphetamines. Now it's in the things that didn't hurt you that bad. Now it's there, right? And so this slide shows you that who's dying from overdose in Shelby County, and this can be extrapolated nationally, Black folks, right? Black folks are dying at a much higher rate than anybody else. We got Black men, then white men, then Black women, then white women, in that order. Because if you think about it, traditionally, Black folks' brains have been an opiate naive territory, right? Not that it's stupid, don't know about opiates, no. It's been opiate naive because it just didn't take them, right? So now you introduce a new thing to that brain that's never had it before, and that brain's gonna be exquisitely sensitive to it. It's gonna be more susceptible to the effects of it, right? And it's gonna take a much lower dose to get you in trouble. So that's what we're seeing here. Also in Shelby County, to look at the ER visits, that backs up the supply. That's who's going into the ER. That's what we're seeing that's getting into trouble, right? So let's talk about addiction. And let's talk about some of the common misperceptions when it comes to addiction. Let me say this. Dependence is your brain's natural environment in an opiate-rich environment. Dependence is your brain's natural response to an opiate-rich environment. Half of us are going to be dependent in 3 to 5 days. I don't know if you guys knew that. That's a scary number when you think about it, right? And so what are those common misperceptions when it comes to people who we term as addicts or addiction, right? Well, it's a choice. It's character failure. You just got to try hard. You got to have more willpower. You can do it. Just stick to it, right? You can. Right? If treatment can't cure addiction, then it's no good, right? Well, you can't just switch one drug for another. That's not being sober. That's not being clean, right? And so we shame them on the way into treatment. We shame them while they're in treatment. And then we shame them on the way out of treatment. How are they supposed to feel better? If somebody comes to me and they're hypertensive and their blood pressure is 180 over 120, I don't shame them and say, oh, should have tried a little harder, right? We don't shame cancer patients because their cells are genetically predisposed to develop a cancerous condition. Seems ridiculous, right? This is the exact same situation. This is a cellular situation. The cellular choice is made long before we get to any other psychosocial choices that are happening. We're going to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that for sure. Right? So what is addiction? It's a pattern of behavior, right? So let's talk about this. So dependence is the natural physical response. I give you an opiate for 5 days. At the end of those 5 days, your body's not going to like it. You're going to have some withdrawal symptoms, some level, fever, chills, sweats, aches, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, runny eyes, runny nose, something, some combination of all those things. Physically dependent doesn't mean you're addicted. It means you're physically dependent because you're on a very strong substance, and now we took that substance away abruptly. Addiction has to do with the behavior that comes along with it, right? Addiction means despite the troubles that are now showing up in your life, you're continuing to use. And this is where the judgment starts to come in, right? I had somebody who came to me, lost their car, lost their house, lost their wife, and that's when they finally came into treatment. They had that moment of courage, right? Addiction means I can't pay my car payment because I'm paying $200 a day for pills. I'm skipping the rent, I'm skipping the mortgage because I don't have the money because I'm spending it on pills. I can't get to work and show up on time because some days I'm dope sick, some days I'm not, and I'm trying to hide it. Nobody's saying anything, but everybody knows, and now I lost my job. So this is where the judgment comes in, right? This is where people look at us and say, oh, just got to do better. What's wrong? I don't understand, right? We're going to unpack why that choice is exactly so hard, right? So when we talk about addiction, right, the thing to also know is that after years of being sober, still have a high chance of relapse. And why is that? Well, let's talk about receptors for a second. Long-standing changes in the brain, right? So we hear all this talk, and I don't like to make things too technical. So we have all these different types of receptors for the neurotransmitters in our brain, right? And we're all born with a certain amount of opiate receptors in our brain and our body for pain. So let's just say we're all born with 10 receptors for opiates, right? You get in a car accident, you hurt your back. You go to the ER, doctor prescribes you Lortab, 10 milligrams twice per day. Great. Those 2 tablets will saturate 40, 50, maybe even 60% of those 10 pain receptors, and you feel fine. But hey, back pain went from an 8 down to a 2, I'm good to go, right? You use that same medication for another week or 2, now those 10 receptors go to 20. You use that same medication for a month or 2 or 3, now those 20 receptors go to 200, and then 2,000 over years, and then 20,000 over years. So now we're getting into what we call tolerance, right? What 2 pills used to be able to cover for 10 receptors, it ain't gonna touch those 20,000 receptors. We call this upregulation, right? So the number of receptors you were born with, because you supplied your brain with this, The brain was like, oh yeah, we like that. We'll have some more receptors, please. And so that goes up, that builds up your tolerance, right? So that's the long-term problem when it comes to addiction. And we're going to talk about how this works. Anybody ever seen this diagram before? All right? Prefrontal cortex. What happens in the prefrontal cortex? There we go, right? Decision-making, high level, executive functioning, it's your filter, right? Prefrontal cortex, you wake up in the morning like, you know what? I'm gonna go get the mail naked. How about that? Right? Who hasn't done that, right? Prefrontal cortex jumps in and says, you know what? We got a neighbor over here, we got a neighbor over there, and I don't know if you've seen yourself naked lately, but we don't probably want to do that, right? And so your prefrontal cortex makes you put some clothes on, so you go check the mail, right? Now, that's good. We all need that. Opiates don't care nothing about your prefrontal cortex. They're going straight for your pleasure center, right? Nucleus accumbens. That's the place that processes pleasure in our body. Anything that has ever felt good to you, you know it felt good because your nucleus accumbens told you so, right? It's the best sleep, the best food, the best sex, the best exercise. That's just jumping off the roof when those things are going on because you get an immediate spike in your excitatory neurotransmitters. Serotonin goes up through the roof. Norepinephrine goes up, adrenaline through the roof. More importantly, dopamine goes up through the roof. And once that starts happening, your brain ain't going to want to turn that off, right? We're going to keep wanting to hit that button over and over and over and over and over again. So when people say, what's a choice? You just got to try harder, right? It's just a matter of willpower. What I say to them is the choice was made before their eyes even opened that morning, because their nucleus accumbens overnight said, hey, we're running a little bit low. We're running on empty. And you're going to get up and you're going to fix that first thing. You're going to grab your phone, you're going to text your dealer, and we're going to figure out where we need to go to get some pills today, or where we need to get some points of that heroin today. There was never a choice they could make. That choice was stripped away from them before their feet ever hit the floor. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. And again, we talked about the natural reward system. Right? It's the pleasure center. It's the thing that keeps gamblers gambling. It's the thing that keeps drinkers drinking because it feels good in the moment. But then later on, that's what gets us into trouble. It's a common pathway for different substances, right? And works with that same mechanism. But ultimately, it's the dopamine that gets everybody into trouble. That is the critical pathway that leads you to addiction, which is those social things that start happening in our lives, and we feel like we can't control it, right? What is the common saying? You know, you come to treatment and say, hey, this thing took over my life. It's controlling my life now, and I lost control, and now this is what I have to do to try to get it back, right? So why medication-assisted treatment, right? Why do we think that works? Well, because addiction is a biological problem. We need a biological fix, right? And it's a chronic condition. So we need long-term treatment. What we know is the longer our patients are in treatment, the longer they live, period. The longer our patients are in treatment, the longer they live. Our average length of stay at Crossroads is about 300 days. I wish it was 900. Because it takes that amount of time. If you think about using for 20 years and you think about the things you lost in life, friendships, relationships, money, homes, cars, right? It takes a while to build those things back up, right? You don't get those things back in 6 months. You don't get those things back in a year, right? When we talk about relapse prevention skills, those are some of those barriers to relapse. Once you hit rock bottom and come back, you're like, you know what? I got a little craving today, but I got this car payment, so I know I need to get my butt to work, and I don't want to lose that again, right? So it takes a while. In our clinics, we use 3 medications: methadone, Suboxone, naltrexone. Everybody familiar with all these 3? Yes, no, where we at? Yes, no, somebody shaking their head no. So these are medications that look very closely like what an opiate looks like. So it sits in that receptor, and it fills that receptor, and it helps you not have cravings, it helps you not be dope sick, but it doesn't give you that euphoria, right? It doesn't help you feel good. It just helps you not feel bad. And with methadone, Suboxone, naltrexone, it sits in those receptors in such a way that it actually blocks people from being able to overdose on it, which is a very cool thing, right? So we've got that, and then we've got one other trick up our sleeve, which is Narcan, right? Which is somebody is in the midst of an overdose, right? Somebody has taken a handful of pills. We don't really know what they were. You don't know what they were, but you're out with them, you suspect. But if you got a Narcan pen or a nasal Narcan, every two to three squirts every 30 seconds to a minute, and it will literally save their life, right? This is what we call the harm reduction part of treatment. Now, interesting side note about naltrexone. Naltrexone, you hear a lot for alcohol addiction, but it also helps with opiate addiction. What we've recently found out as of last week, I don't know if anybody here has had COVID, anybody whose families had COVID, but folks who are suffering from long COVID, we have found out as of last week that naltrexone can help reverse some of those symptoms. Naltrexone has a very unique action on the cytokines, which play a role in long-term inflammation that helps reduce that inflammation due to long COVID. And it also boosts your opiate growth factor, OGF. Opiate growth factor is the thing that helps you generate new cells and helps boost your immune system. Who knew, right? Just a little side, a little extra information for you. I thought it was a cool thing to find out. So again, advantage of MAT, it improves patient survival. The longer they're in treatment, right, the longer they live, increases the retention in treatment. We want them to stay as long as possible, decreases illicit opiate use, increases patients' ability to gain and maintain employment, right? All those good things. Improve birth outcomes among women with substance use disorders. Guys, I've got a family in treatment right now. The thing that a lot of folks don't want to talk about or don't want to tell the truth about is that opiate use is a multi-generational addiction. I've got a family right now where I treat the mom, the dad, the daughter, and her unborn child. The unborn child is what brought the daughter into treatment because she came in crying because she said, I don't want my baby to be born addicted, right? This is multi-generational. This isn't new, right? We've been fighting and losing this battle for a very, very long time. So MAT allows you to make full recovery. It's one of those things, one of the most rewarding things in treatment for me is in about 2 or 3 months after somebody comes in and they walk in and they're walking a little bit differently and they're talking a little bit differently. And they come in my office and they sit down. I ask them how they're doing, and they just burst out in tears. And they're like, you know what? I didn't think feeling this good was possible. I never thought I'd be able to get my life back. I just didn't think it was possible. And that's the cool thing. And that's the part where I tell folks who say, you're simply trading one drug addiction for another. This is the part where I tell them, to go straight.
Yes, go ahead.
Because it works, and we know it does. I think one of the things I want to leave you guys with is that when we talk about patients and we talk about people's lives and we talk about how we got where we got to and why we're coming into treatment and what are those things that happen in our life that made us susceptible to it, right? It's not, in addition to the dependence, what are those things that made us susceptible to the addiction, right? What are those things that we're trying to avoid? What are those things we're trying to numb up? What is that thing that we're trying not to feel, right? I don't know if you guys know this. As Americans, as of 2022, we make up less than 5% of the world's population. But we account for over 70% of the world's opiate use. Right? That's a crazy number. Less than 5% of the world's population, but we consume over 70% of the opiates. So my question to you, my fellow Americans, is what's going on with us? What what is happening here that's got us in so much pain that we're desperate to cover it up? Does anybody know the top 5 countries in the world for drug use? Go for it. What are those countries? Do you know? Say again? You would think, no. You would think, right? No. Right? Because, right, we think, right, because that's the common perception. Hey, this is where the drugs are coming from. So this must be those countries that are really struggling with it, right? And if we could stop the influx, we'd have a shot. But no, here's what I'm telling you. In America, we do not have a supply problem, right? We get drugs better than anybody. We've got a demand problem. And we've got to start telling ourselves the truth about why we need so many drugs to numb up what it is we're feeling or trying not to feel. Top 5 countries for drug use. This is going to shock you because it shocked me. Number 1, Afghanistan. Number 2, Iran. 3, Russia. 4, guesses? Ukraine. Rounding out the top 5, good old America. Right? So think about that. Afghanistan, Iran, Russia, Ukraine. When we imagine what those people's lives are like, right? Most of us don't imagine their lives to be anything like ours, right? But in one of the most critical parts of the population, we are right there with them, swimming in the same pool, right? So there's something very painful going on here as well. But I think as Americans, we're a lot better at covering it up. We're a lot better at numbing it up, right? We got a lot of numbing medicine before we ever get to the opiates. We got video games, we got Netflix, we can binge, we got food, right? We can binge on whatever sweet treats and let it wash over us, right? We can veg out and binge our favorite show. We've got so many things we can do to check out of our lives for hours every single day that I think we're just a little bit better at hiding, right? Here's the thing I love about working with patients with addiction. As a psychiatrist for over 20 years, what I have found out, the thing that makes me good at what I do is I listen to what you say, yeah, but I really tune into the thing you're not trying to let me see, right? The thing that you're trying to hide, the thing that's causing you the shame, that's helping you feel small, making you want to keep it in the dark and keep you in the corner, right? Everybody, every single person has something they're pretending not to know about themselves, myself included. Let me say that again. Every single person, we all have something we're pretending not to know about ourselves. The thing that's so cool about an addiction patient is they are no longer pretending because they lost that right, because they lost a lot of stuff. So they no longer have that privilege of waking up and pretending not to know the thing it is that's keeping their life going. And that brought them to that moment of courage. That moment of courage brought them to us. And it is our responsibility as providers, as family members, as friends, to help them find that voice, to look them in their eyes and give them a hug or shake their hand and say, hey, you know what? I'm glad you made it here. I'm glad you got to this place. Let's see if I can help you get one step further. Does that make sense? Cool. Guys, I'm out of material. Let's open it up for questions. You can ask me anything related to opiates, anything related to Crossroads, anything related to wild, crazy, fun TV stuff. Any questions? Hey. Yep.
For also, they use the doctor able to see the patient on video. But is there ever a time, thank you, is there ever a time when a new patient for the initial evaluation, do they have to come into the office? And then how do you look at their UDSs?
So that's a great question. That's a great question. Crossroads, we do something really, really cool. We are never closed. We're open 24/7, right? We do something called instant intakes. So if it's 11:30 on a Friday night and somebody's like, hey, you know what? I think it's time. I can't keep doing this. We can literally, once you call our number, we can literally have you on the phone with the provider within 30 minutes, right? And we get you seen, we can get you prescribed within 30 minutes or less. And then from there, then you come in, right? Then the following day, you're gonna come into one of our centers and you're gonna be seen and we're gonna do the full workup, right? But we can't control when that moment of courage strikes, right? But we need to be ready. Because if you go sleep on it, nucleus accumbens is gonna tell you to do something different in the morning, right? So we need to be ready. So that's a great question, yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you have a facility in Illinois?
You know what? Go to the website. I don't think we're in Illinois just yet. But we're expanding it literally by the week, so I don't think we're there yet. But we can always go to the website and check what's I'm down off up here. Yep, you're welcome. Any other questions, Nancy? Down here? Yep. So, right, so the prescribing trends in Shelby County, they were actually going down, which was great, right? And once we see the prescribing going down, then we know that in time, the overdose deaths are going to follow. So for the 3 years leading up to 2016, 17, 18, and 19, leading up to the pandemic, Shelby County's numbers were trending in the right direction. Right? They were still high like the rest of the country, but they were trending down nicely, right? And then 2020 hit and we saw a 4% spike, boom. And overdose deaths. And so the demographics was a very interesting shift, right? So before 2020, it was more of a white working class population that we saw leading the way in overdose. White males, white females, right? Then black folks, then brown folks, then everybody else, right? 2020 hit and we saw almost an immediate reversal, right? Once fentanyl hit the hood, okay? That's when we started seeing the problems with black and brown folks, because our brains weren't used to the opiates and they certainly weren't used to fentanyl, right? I don't know if you guys realize this, but I don't have fingernails. I got like little teeth-tiny nails because I'm anxious and I chew on all that stuff. So half a fingernail full of fentanyl. Let me put it this way. Anybody ever seen a grain of salt? Okay. So imagine that grain of salt is a grain of fentanyl. 10 grains will kill you, right? You can't even taste 10 grains of salt. 10 grains, it's that little of an amount, right? And in my experience, I have found that drug dealers are not good chemists, right? They don't know how to add that up, right? They don't do math good, right? And so that's what's happening with us. Any other questions, guys? Something over here?
Yeah, you do a lot of Suboxone and methadone.
Yes.
What's your success rate of actually getting people off of Suboxone and methadone?
So when folks are on, yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. So that's a great question. So when folks come into treatment, our success rate mimics those across the country. So we at 90 days, we're about 90% sober, right? That's the success rate on Suboxone, on methadone. Now, the success rate in tapering people off is higher than that because it's easy. You just got to do it slow, right? So the problem that started with prescribing is, people had legitimate injuries. They got hurt. They had a car accident. They got hurt on the job, right? They weren't just trying stuff, right? Doctor prescribed you some Lortab, Percocet, some Roxys. Take it for a week, take it for a couple of weeks, take it for a month, and then they stopped it, right? It's the abrupt stoppage that gets us into trouble. And so it's the same principle if we're tapering somebody off of Suboxone, tapering somebody off of methadone, right? Just talked to a patient yesterday, right? He's been in treatment for the last 10 years. He's in his 60s. He's had cancer. He's beat it twice. Now he wants to come off. So here's what we're going to do. He's taking Suboxone 16 milligrams a day, 8 in the morning, 8 at night. Here's what we're going to do. Every 2 weeks, we're going to decrease your dose by 4 milligrams. So we're going to go from 16 to 12. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to go from 12 to 8. So at the end of that first month, you're down to 8 milligrams. The next 2 weeks, we're gonna go from 8 to 4. 2 weeks after that, we're gonna go from 4 to nothing. Now, the interesting thing is, going from 4 to nothing, that's a big jump. Now we're walking a tightrope without a net, right? You gotta understand, these folks have been through some stuff, lost some stuff, right? And so flying free, the last time they flew free, didn't work too well for them. And so we've got a lot of folks who get stuck on that 2 milligram dose. Not because you can feel it, not because they need it, but because they're scared of life going back to what it was before that, right? So that's why, in addition to tapering the medication, you gotta do the work, right? You gotta heal some of those wounds. What were those things you were trying to numb up? What were those things you were trying to run away from or numb up and not feel or feel better from if we did our job correctly, right? And we healed those wounds while we help your receptors down regulate and go from the 20,000 back to 2,000, back to 200, back to 20. If we did all of those things right, then we don't have any problems taking folks down. The success rate is very high.
Have you seen any luck in that last 2% using other or homeopathic natural remedies like hemp or cannabinoid?
So we don't recommend that. We do evidence-based medicine and we do measurement-based medicine, right? We measure how people feel. We measure things that are going on in their life that are working. We measure things that aren't working, right? And we use that. So we can't recommend. We hear the stories anecdotally and we know some of those things work and we can see what's in them, but because we can't control or regulate what exactly is in it, we can't recommend. So we don't recommend those things. But folks have come in and told us stories that they've tried this and they've tried that and it worked. But if it works, great. As long as it's not harmful, go for it. But if it's harmful, then we can't recommend that. Well, guys, I've enjoyed you. Thank you for your time. Hope you get something out.
All right, we're going to do a quick break. So you guys, it's a 10-minute break. If we can do around 7 minutes, that would be better. We've got a little catching up to do.